Welcome back to Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast, episode 57. So join me today is Andrew Farina, and Andy is an ordinary guy who has been bringing amazing results and cutting-edge training and coaching to clients and the community over 30 years. He started as an electrical engineer and became president and founder of Fearless Health. He's also an ultra trail runner with 300 miles finished under his belt. He grew up the kid who can't and became the man who can. He consistently helps others to do what they thought they could never do. And is a husband to an amazing woman, Suzanne, for 36 years, and the father of 5 accomplished children aged 21 to 32. He's an avid researcher, love of beauty and adventure, movie enthusiastic, and enjoys seeing people living life to the fullness. In the fall of 2020, he was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer, had surgery in December, got weight 2 weeks, and a year later complete a running this third 100-mile trail race in under 25.5 hours. He has been cancer-free now for over 2 years. So, Andy, you're amazing. And thank you so much for just being here with me this evening.
Man, I think you're more amazing just getting all that out at the very beginning. My goodness. Thank you. That's very kind, everything, for sure.
Yes. So, Andy, we go back, let's see. So I live in Gainesville, let my listeners know, and then go to a gym called the Gainesville Health and Fitness. And that's how I met you. Good. I don't even know how long, maybe that was before COVID. So maybe what, 5 years or something? And you were one of my favorite trainers. And I used to do like a boot camp or something. I don't even remember how you call that class, but you put us through the ropes and I love it. So I was always looking forward to go to that. And my Danny, my oldest son, and myself like really enjoyed your class. We were sad when you guys you finish it for some reason. I don't remember what happened, if you were gonna just move it to Tioga or do something on your own. I don't remember the situation, but
Well, yes and yes. I moved 2 classes over to Tioga because I needed the Wednesday night time slot.
okay.
And then I also started my coaching company back in 2014, and it kind of took off, and I just needed the time. So I'm still training lots of folks, but just around different scheduled times. So
Gotcha.
it's tougher though, because my Toyota class is at 9 a.m. on, and that's tough for folks who are just in the, regular 8 to 5 workforce.
Exactly. And that's the reason why we couldn't go back to it, but I miss it. So that was fun. But then I came across you when you came for rehab here. So I'm gonna go back into my first, question for conversation. You wanna tell us about your career? Like, how did you become who you are right now?
Well, that's a great story. I hope what our listeners hear is that anybody can do it if you don't give up, and follow your dreams, and continue to press in, and get the support around you that you need, because none of us do it by ourselves, for sure. I got here because of the help of a lot of people. Wherever here is, I think I just like seeing people get better and helping people, and then I just keep doing that every day, one day at a time. But so for those who don't know me, when I was born, the doctors told my mom I would never walk. I was born 7 weeks early, and I had some deformities in my legs, and so that was a shocker to my mom. I had corrective casts and braces for the first 5 years, and then corrective shoes for another 2 years.
Wow.
And slowly I was upgraded to, well, he might be able to walk, to he'll walk with a limp, to he'll walk, but he won't be able to run, and it just kept upgrading. I'm so thankful for that, of course. but I loved math and science in high school and decided to go to school for engineering and became an electrical engineer. And I love designing high-tech stuff, but I've always been fascinated by the human body. No matter how high-tech things got with electronics, I thought the human body was far more intriguing and complex. And so my wife was a group fitness instructor at a local gym. And I said, man, you got it made, sweetheart. You get paid for working out. And she says, well, why don't you do it? And I said, well, that's not a bad idea. So then I got into that. That was a long time ago. That was before we had our first child, it was about 32 years ago.
Wow.
And I started running in college. I used to play basketball and football in high school, and I started running in college, and I found that I was pretty good at it. You know, I wasn't great, you know, but I was pretty good at it. So I kept at it, but I had a really bad back injury that got worse and worse. And I was in pain 24/7 for 23 years. So that was a major problem. So they kept telling me, the doctors kept telling me at age 30, you know, you're going to have to stop running, you're going to have to stop running. But I just didn't believe that that was going to needed to be the reality of my life at such a young age. And so I had a little conversation with God about it. And I just felt like he was encouraging me to keep pursuing, you know, ways to get over it, to heal. And so that put me on an 18-year journey of research. I'm a very avid researcher, like you said in the warm-up. Research and experimentation on myself. And I learned a lot about the back and a lot about the human body. And the first race after 18 years out of running races was Gator Gallop.
Wow.
And it was 2 miles. And my back hurt so bad after that, it took me a week to recover, but I recovered. And as long as you can recover, I tell people all the time, they say, how do you run 100 miles? Well, I said, well, I started at 1 mile. When my back was injured, I could run 1 mile and it would take me about a week to recover because the pain was great, but I would recover, and that's a good sign. So, so I worked my way up from, you know, that Gator Gallop of 2 miles to 100 miles. And, you know, I talk in circles a lot, so I apologize to our audience,
No, no, that's perfect. And here you've been
but I
doing.
just kind of I just tell the story and let people intersect where they want to jump in because there's a lot going on.
Yes. So, and then how many times you've been doing the 100? No, that's just one time, right?
Well, I've completed 3 of them. I've completed 32 ultra marathons, which are anything from 31 miles to 100 miles. I've completed 5 marathons and about 20 plus obstacle races in the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years after I came back from an 18-year layoff from racing.
Wow, wow.
So
That's
I tell people that to say, don't give up.
Yes.
Like, don't give up. You know, just don't listen. So many medical people told me to just stop. You got to stop. And of course, some people do. But for some reason, I just felt like I'm not supposed to stop. So I just worked with what my body would give me over time, learned a bunch of stuff. And then here I am in the last, you know, whatever it is, 12, 13 years, just doing all the things I dreamed of doing.
That's such an inspiration story. And then tell us a little bit about your diagnosis. What happened? How do you find about your cancer?
Yeah, that was a real shocker, and a little bit reveals some of my my struggle with arrogance. I was under the arrogant belief that if I did everything the way I was supposed to do it, you know, if you eat right, which I do, and I'm a certified nutrition coach, so I know what to do. I sleep well, I manage my stress, nothing's perfect, of course, I make a lot of mistakes. People who know me know that, but I manage my stress well, I exercise well, I do all the things you're supposed to do. And it was right after New Year's Day, January of 2019. And I get a phone call from my doctor saying, Andy, I'm a little concerned. Your PSAs have jumped up. PSAs, your prostate something antigen. But anyhow, that's a controversial test, but it's not so much the number as much as the trend. If it's trending up, it's typically for men, it's not a good sign.
Yep. Yep.
If you have just one reading that jumps up and then, 3 months later you take it again and it drops down, it was just an anomaly. But mine was trending up and I was now out of range. And I thought, this is, very disconcerting, of course, because I'm doing everything you're supposed to do not to have prostate cancer. My mother died of multiple myeloma cancer at 61 or 62. I apologize. I can't remember which one, but very young. My father ended up with cancer after some other health struggles. He died at 77. My wife's father ended up with a glioblastoma in his early 50s, healthy 50-year-old architect, has a stroke. They find this massive brain tumor. 11 months later, he's gone. So when I got that phone call, I was a little shook up. And so was my wife, Suzanne. But after careful reflection and consideration, I am not a big fan of surgery. And I thought, let me see because fortunately, I'm one of the fortunate ones, at least at that point, where prostate cancer, and I didn't know if I had it at the time, but it was pointing in that direction, is a slow growing cancer. And so I thought, okay, let me see if I can apply some alternative therapies, some nutritional therapies to see if we can, stop the growth, if the PSAs will level out. And for a year they did. They just stayed pretty much the same. And I thought, okay.
How did you do that? Just nutrition?
Nutrition, an alternative therapy called homeopathy, which was practiced, in Europe and the United States in the 1800s, early 1900s, that kind of thing. And ANF therapy, aminoneurofrequency therapy. So there were some multiple therapies I worked with. And, fortunately, it stayed the same for a year. So now we're in the January of 2020, but it's still creeping up like 1/10 of a point. And it's like, okay, we need to keep an eye on this, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I started juicing, organic vegetables. I really was trying to fine tune my nutrition, fine tune, my health. And it was hanging in there. But then a year later, so now we're in the January of 2022, right? Because then I had it jumped up further and it was like, oh, this is no good. And so I said, let me give it one last try and a couple therapies. And then, so now it's like 2 years have gone by of this.
Oh, wow.
And I took, so I was taking some risk. I'm not saying that, people should do what I did, but that was what I felt like was important for me to do. And my wife was on board and we were trying to avoid just normal protocols if we could. Mm-hmm. But in June of 2020, let me think now. It was 2 years and 20, so it was 2021, December of 2021. So 2021, in June of 2021, PSAs went up to high, like 9 point. They're supposed to be below 4, and they were up at 9. It's like, this is no good. I'm going to go have an MRI because I didn't want to have the transrectal biopsy, the TRUS biopsy that they do. I don't think that's in my opinion, I don't think that's a very good procedure for diagnosing. because you can only get a certain angle, you can introduce infection. I know the numbers are small and I'm not a doctor, but I wasn't comfortable with that procedure. So I said, let me go have an MRI and let's see if the MRI shows up anything. So I did that in June, had the MRI, found out that I have a lesion on the surface, so it had surfaced. And so that was not good news at all. And then I decided that there was a new procedure that I had read about at Johns Hopkins and UCLA called transperineal biopsy, where they go through the perineal wall instead of through the rectum. And I thought this is a much better option. And so the only guy I could find was out at that I liked was out at UCLA. And lo and behold, a week later, I find out he's moving to Gainesville to practice at UF Health.
Yeah.
So I like, this is a no-brainer. So I talked to the office there, got in for a transperineal biopsy. They did that in September, found out that the cancer had surfaced and it had gotten aggressive. And so that also was not good news, because if it had spread already, I was in a little bit more trouble than where I started. So then you had to wait a period of time for to do anything. But once I got that biopsy back, I was like, I only have two choices. I can do radiation or I can do surgery. For as young as I was, as healthy as I was, I felt like the surgery was a better option and looked like a better long-term solution for me in my research. And so we scheduled the surgery. I asked if we could do it in November because I had a race, I'm sorry, in December, because I had a race called the Georgia Death Race in November. And I said, well, if I'm going to go under the knife, at least I should get a good race in before the surgery. So I went ahead and did the race in November, had the surgery December of 2021. And long story short is in 2023, I went to see my surgeon, 2 years cancer-free. He feels really good about where I'm at and the direction I'm heading. I don't control the universe by any manner of means or my cells, but so far, I'm taking good care of myself. Good Lord smiling upon me, and I'm doing okay.
Excellent. So you talk a lot and you are a nutritionist certified. What advice would you give people that maybe is dealing with cancer about nutrition in general? As anything in particular you would say that you think back, like I introduced this and I feel that was a really good thing, not necessarily for keeping you from surgery, but to just kind of give you the energy and kind of help you through this process.
Excellent question. Just to be clear too, I'm not a registered dietitian, so I want to make sure the audience knows that I've studied nutrition a lot, and for decades. I'm a certified nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. But my clients are getting great results and I've gotten great results. So I can talk about some principles that I guided my decision-making. And this is what I would encourage people as key tips, even though some people may have to adjust because of their life demands and things like that. My job is more flexible. I work around my schedule because I work around client schedule. So I can spread out the day some. And so I can work time in to prepare meals and things like that. But I would say this, if you read the very lengthy book, there's nothing that's a secret. It's just whether you have the time to research it or talk to somebody who has. If you look at cancer and all that and history and so on and so forth, you see that if people will eat a lot more organic, especially organic vegetables and whole foods, quality lean meats. I went vegan once I knew I was moving in the direction of cancer, just because in reading the China study, and reading like the Blue Zone study and things like that, the studies that went with that, you see that people that eat more plant-based, not completely, but less animal products, more plant-based, tend to do better. It's not necessarily true. I'm not saying everybody should do that. I chose to do it. It helped me in my athletics. It helped me with my recovery and my energy. So my body was responding well to it. I know there are lots of good people that don't agree with that, and I'm totally okay with that. I would never force that opinion, but eating real food, staying away from packaged processed foods, if you just do that, you will, I guarantee, in most cases, all my client cases, no exception, energy levels went up, body composition improved. My athletes, their athletic endeavors improved. So I'm a big fan of whole foods, real foods, non-packaged, non-processed foods. I also started juicing vegetables. I can get away with that as an endurance athlete. I train probably about 90 minutes a day at least. So I need like extra carbohydrates for energy, but if you juice a pound of carrots and some celery and a couple small apples, that's not a gross amount of carbohydrates you're introducing. If you introduce it around your workout window, it's not going to spike your insulin. If you're not an athlete, you may have to do it in smaller doses, throughout the day, so you don't spike your insulin. But, as much plant-based eating that you're comfortable doing, organic, real food, is I encourage people to try it.
Okay.
If you feel a lot better, great. If you get good results, great. If you don't, well,
Yes.
all you lost was some time and a little bit of money. I know but you'll spend so much more money in the medical system that it's worth a shot. And my clients are getting really good results with it. So I feel pretty comfortable just, from the research and from my experience with myself and others that, that is key. And even more important than that is your sleep.
Yep.
Because that's when your body repairs.
Yep.
And believe it or not, the average American worker only sleeps about 5.5 hours a night. And most studies show that the human body needs between 7 and 7.5 when not under duress. So if you're under duress, you might need a little more. Like if your body's fighting cancer, you might need more. So sleep is critical, and yet it is very neglected in our society. So those are two big tips. Eat real food, sleep well. And if you can't sleep all night because of various reasons, 10, 15-minute nap here and there during the day is not a bad idea.
Yep. That's perfect. That's great tips. What type of resources do you use that help you to make decisions about your treatments?
Yes, that is a great question. So what I did is, I feel like I'm married to a nurse too, so she's a super great resource as well, but who's also very athletic and trains really well and is has people at the gym all know her because she's a boundless energy and everything else. But couple key resources. I talked with experts in the field, not just anybody. I tried to find the people that really had a reputation for being very successful in dealing with cancer, treating cancer. I talked with patients who had gone through the process successfully, what they did, how they experienced. I tried to find key books and studies to research on my own, because my philosophy is I'm responsible for my health. Doctors can tell me what to do, and I may agree or disagree. And I know that sounds a bit arrogant that I would disagree with a doctor, but I had to disagree with my doctors at time in this process because I knew what what my body does, and I knew the specific needs. And a lot of times doctors are, and medical people, we've been around them, my wife and I are married, over 36 years. She's a nurse. We have doctor friends, wonderful people, very caring, but they're overloaded.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, they have to go with a standard of practice, but that standard may not be refined or tweaked for your needs.
Yep.
So I think it's my responsibility to know what my needs are, understand what they're telling me, and
Mhm.
then tweak it for my needs. So, but pretty much those three things were key. I talked to experts in the field. I talked to key people that had gone through the process that I felt like were trustworthy. And I did research in books and, medical writings.
Yeah. And that's very, I'm so happy that you say that, Andy. I've been on this field oncology for like what, 14, 15 years. And it is, that's what I try to encourage patients, right? You are part of the team. You are not just somebody that you put in there and you've been told by all these different, healthcare providers, this is what you need to do. You are part of it and you have to make decisions with the team. And you can bring it to the table and you can get second opinions and you can say, I don't think I would like to do that. What are your options with ABC? And then look what those options are. So I think that that's super great that you're doing that because, you got to be part of it, like you say, right now, because the way that unfortunately the medical world is when it's being like overloaded, then patients
Yeah,
also take more and more responsibility, which it is sad because you're thinking, well, you as a doctor can tell me what to do, right? Because you're the expert. But unfortunately, like you say, no every treatment works the same way with every patient. So it's really take
right.
all different things that you gotta take in consideration for this to be successful. So I'm so happy that you really you live it, works for you, and I'm glad that you are kind of like telling that to the audience because that's something that we really try to encourage all the time. So
Well, I applaud you for that, Durley, because, it is a team effort. And, I would come to my checkups and my medical, appointments with literally with sometimes typed up questions and data. I would keep track of my own data and then I would bring it to the appointment. I'd have my list of questions. I'd come in with my little folder,
yep.
because you know your body. I mean, you may not have it all, you may not know all the details and have it all figured out. It doesn't matter. There's things you contribute to the team. So I just applaud you for encouraging that. I applaud you for being humble enough to encourage that, because you know this stuff so well, but you want your people to be involved, and we need each other. We do. It's always a team effort. It's always a team effort. Everything is a team effort.
So how much do you think that being an athlete helped you to recover from your cancer and the surgery that you had for it?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind that, most people like Dr. Sue, who was my surgeon, very well-known urologist here at UF Health. You know, he would always rant and rave, you're my, example of my best patient, you recovered so well, you did everything you were supposed to do. He was very encouraging, great guy. But I think it's the mindset. It's mindset, I think, is so critical in the battle against cancer, because what goes into your conscious mind goes into your subconscious mind and then affects your body,
Mhm.
right? And so, being an athlete, especially an ultra endurance athlete where you're running for 24 to 30 hours straight, you get in your head a lot during that time because you're hurting, you're dealing with pain a lot. You're not just running 100 miles, you're running 100 miles in the mountains. So you may climb, 10, 15,000 feet. You're going to descend 10, 15,000 feet. Your legs feel like garbage. And, you could either whine and complain and think about the pain, which I've done, and it hurt me, or, I can learn to leverage the pain, leverage the discomfort, leverage the difficulty to my advantage. And I felt like that helped me a lot in the journey, because let me tell you, it was really hard as an athlete to lose 20 to 30 pounds of lean body mass. I'm not a very big guy. I mean, I was like at my peak, I'm, 6'1", 188. After surgery, my wife said she felt like she was hugging a skeleton. I was like 6'1", I was 158,
Wow.
almost 30 pounds lighter, about 30 pounds lighter. I felt like a skeleton, she said. That was really hard. I was really weak, and between everything that was going on, and I had a really hard time with the anesthesia, and I couldn't eat for days, because I haven't taken over-the-counter drugs or prescription drugs literally in like decades. I can count it maybe on one hand. So they had some problems with the anesthesia, in the sense of my body was just not used to it. And so, I just had a hard time with my digestion system after that. I couldn't eat, lost all this weight. But your mindset in the midst of that is going to be, could be, woe is me. And like I always tell folks, I've never seen self-pity help anyone at any point, so I didn't want to go into self-pity. I wanted to have the mindset, Andy, you're strong enough, you have support. God is with you. Suzanne is with you. Your kids love you. They're with you. I need to get better for them. And I set my mind on the things that I could control. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to try to sleep. My exercise for today is a walk to the mailbox and back. And sometimes that was it. That's what I could muster at the time. And then it was like, okay, my goal is 2,000 steps today. And then it became 5,000 steps, and then 10,000 steps. And I just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I think, I think we're all athletes, and we can all be athletes, even better athletes. And I think it really starts with your mindset. Are you going to feel sorry for yourself? Are you going to look at all the negative? Or are you going to say, thank you for another day? Thank you for the opportunity to walk to the mailbox. I'm really bummed that, I can't do my other things, but I can do this, and start really small and be okay with that. So I think that's what being an athlete really helped. And plus my body didn't have to when you have a healthy body composition, toxins store in your adipose tissue, your fat tissue. So the fact that I was lean already, there was just a lot of things that I had an advantage where, like, if say I got some sort of UTI or something like that, my doc was saying, well, most of my patients, it might take 3 months to recover. He says, I bet if you got one, you'd probably recover within a week or two. Because I had a strong immune system and things like that. So, when you take care of yourself, it's not just about how you look. It's much more about you're preparing yourself. Like, my mindset is I have to have energy and stay healthy for the people I love and the community, because I make a contribution to their lives. So it's not about me, it's about them. So you have to determine in your cancer battle what your mindset's going to be, and what's going to motivate you, and what's going to keep you. Like, I had hard days, don't get me wrong. I struggled at times with self-pity and stuff. But overall, I tried to say, no, Andy, don't do that. Go to what is important to you. And that's loving your family, loving people, doing what's right, that kind of thing. So that's where it really helped, was mindset.
Great. Did you have, I know you have physical therapy, right? As recovering through this process, right?
Yeah, actually, a pelvic floor therapy would be more exact.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit how that helped, how that changed things for you?
Yeah, well, that's another great question. I think the way that helped was the fact that it gave me a sense of autonomy, like I'm involved in the healing process. I mean, we all know the body is made to heal. Like if you cut your finger, if you do nothing and it doesn't get infected, it's going to heal.
Mhm,
But it's nice to be able to be a part of the process.
mhm,
So, it's like, well, okay, if I can have these symptoms post-surgery for a year if I do nothing, or 6 months if I get involved in some physical therapy, well, gosh, I'm going to get involved. So I
mhm.
think it encouraged me um, in the healing process. And again, it's another wise voice in your life helping you get where you want to get. And I think, you know, we never get there by ourselves. It's always a team effort. So um, that's where it helped me. It kept me encouraged. It kept me focused on the healing process. Um, and I had another voice to bounce questions off of and gain insight from.
Okay,
Um,
that's great. That's awesome. What was your most painful lesson that you learned in this journey?
ooh, you're asking great questions, and some of them are just hard. Um, I think um, the most painful lesson was the fragility of life, the fragility of my body, and that I'm not in control. And let me tell you why it was emotionally difficult for me. Um, I grew up in a broken family, and I took care of myself a lot.
Mhm,
My parents divorced when I was 14. I was probably on my own a little bit before that, or a lot on my own. Put myself through college. In default mode, I'm very self-sufficient.
mhm,
And I just think, well, if I work hard and do the right thing, everything's going to turn out all right,
mhm,
And there's truth to that. And there's obviously I've experienced that. But it was really hard for me feeling like I've done so much well in the health realm for myself. And here I was, like, at that point, what I felt like was a human skeleton. I'm walking around, forgive my bluntness. This is my New York bluntness coming. I'm walking around with what I called the pee bag because I had a catheter in the first 10 days after surgery. And, I'm walking around with this pee bag, and I'm struggling to get to the mailbox and back at first,
mhm,
and it's like, you know, I don't control the most important things.
mhm,
Like I have the privilege. Uh, it was an ego check. It was like I have the privilege of being involved in the process, and I'm a person of faith, and so I believe God is involved in all this. And I read the Bible. I try to live by love and what it communicates. You know, but I realized, just how out of control I am and what's most important, especially having key loved ones die young.
mhm.
And, we can talk about dying young, but it's a little different when you feel like you could be facing it.
Yep.
Now, fortunately, when they did the surgery, the cancer, though aggressive, had not spread yet. It wasn't in my lymph nodes, it hadn't spread. So that was good news. Um, but what if it had? And what if it was like my mom, who got diagnosed and a year later was gone? What
Mhm,
if it was like Suzanne's dad, who diagnosed and 11 months later is gone?
mhm,
And watching her mom and her struggle through that. And
mhm,
it really shook up my cancer, really shook up my wife, because she's like, oh no, I don't want to lose Andy, kind of thing. And so it was hard. It was scary. Um, I don't get scared easy, but that was kind of scary. Like, gosh, these cancer cells could multiply and I could be in big trouble. Um, So it was a humbling experience.
Mhm.
The beautiful thing about it is it made me value each day of life
Mhm.
more.
Okay.
And it made me value Suzanne, my kids, my friends, the people in my life. It made me value them more.
Mhm.
And so there were hard things, but hard things always, if we leverage them well, they always lead to beauty and goodness.
Yep.
And it's finding that beauty and goodness that really makes the difference.
Yep. Yep. And
And
you
it
know,
takes some work.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, now that you mentioned that as a patient, I haven't been in any of you guys' shoes, but working with patients with cancer on a daily basis really make me realize a lot of things in my life as well, right? How you just, don't sweat the smallest stuff, right? I cannot really go home and complain that I have some hip pain
Right.
because I had a good workout on my legs when a lot of people out there is struggling how you struggle because of cancer. So definitely make
Yes.
the life in a completely different way that I used to before I start treating patients with cancer. So, like I said,
Very well.
but
Good
yeah,
for you.
yeah, it's like I see what you're saying from like, more like a healthcare provider that hasn't been living that, but in a way, I kind of live that situation day by day with everyone I treat. So, but yes, definitely make you see a different, like life is being seen different after you've been diagnosed. And that's why you're like
Yeah.
the most fun patient population to work with because it's just so grateful, right? It is really
Mhm.
very nice to see that what you do is making a difference. I'm sure that when you were doing your pelvic health therapy, it's nice to see, oh my God, he's progressing, he's feeling better. Look at what he's able to do now. Now he can be, able to go without the back, the P-back anymore. All those kind of things that
Yeah.
day a
Right.
day, right? So little things.
Yeah.
So that's it's really nice to see that. So
Yeah, and it was fun to share that with my surgeon too. Like when I finished my first race back after surgery, which was 11 months later, I texted my two docs right away and just said, "Hey, this is what happened." And then when I finished my 100-miler a few months later, I texted them right away, and they were so excited, and stuff. So,
we always
it's
get
just
excited about everything. It's like, oh, that's amazing. And it's like it's like, you guys become our models. We're always going to be talking
yeah.
about that patients that are being successful because you're going to be motivation for somebody else who maybe is just going through that right now. So
Well,
that's
you guys have sacrificed so much to become who you are.
Mhm.
I wanted them to celebrate too. I want to say, like, thank you so much for all the good work that you did. Look at what I'm able to do because of what you did,
That's
and so thank you for going through everything you went through, to get where you are so that you can help, just everyday people like myself, get where we want to get. So it's a team effort.
Yep, absolutely. So will be any three books that you will recommend to the audience and why?
Oh, yes. Um, Yes, there are three books that I can recommend. Um, One, I would recommend if you really like data, like lots of data, you know, I would encourage people reading the book, The China Study, the maybe the greatest study on nutrition ever done in the sense that how in depth it is.
Okay.
That would be one book. Understanding how plants affect your body versus animal-based foods
Okay.
affect your body. Now,
Okay.
there are people that shoot it all down, but I'm not saying just because plants are better for you, you should only eat plant-based. I've mentioned that multiple times before. But what I am saying is understand the benefits.
Okay.
So that's one key one that that I'd recommend. My bookshelf, one of them is I read a lot, and so I have books everywhere. And one of them, why I keep looking up, it's because
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at these
You're
books.
like, which one is
Um,
the other one?
yeah. Um, the second book I would recommend is the book Grit. Um, Very popular book, but it's the idea about how mental grit is the passion and perseverance to attain long-term goals. And with cancer, you know, nothing happens quick, you know, so you have to have the mental grit to stay positive and hang in there and go through all the difficulties you have to go through, the complications that may occur from the medications, from the surgeries, things like that. You've got to have the right mindset. I can't stress that enough. So that's a book I would recommend. I can give lots of cancer books, but you would probably know better than that on that. I'm trying to give a little bit of a variety things that may be helpful. The third book I would recommend, but I would say you could, I would recommend, believe it or not, the Bible as one. People see it often as something that's been often used and abused unfortunately by people taking advantage of others. But it is really, if you read any of the ancient texts, you know, things that have been around for centuries upon centuries, the Stoics, ancient texts as a whole. You know, I recommend the Bible, but there's lots of great ancient texts, right? Stuff that has withstood the principles that have withstood the test of time for even thousands of years. That kind of wisdom never comes easy. And reading the stories and the poetry and the history within ancient texts, I think can be very inspiring. If you're not into ancient texts, then I would say find inspiring biographies. You know, so my third book is really a grouping of books. I have my personal bias, but I would not force that on anybody. So, you know, you find the one that's your bias, but those would be, that would be what I'd recommend.
Get it. And to wrap up, is any other question that you wish I will have asked you and you have answered it?
You did such a great job with your questions. No, I don't have a question, but if I may, I have jabbered on a lot as an Italian former New Yorker. So I'm sorry for my abundance of words.
No, I love it. No, it's been a great conversation. Yes.
But I would like to say one last thing for everyone who's listening is, you know, if you were given as a teenager one car, and, you know, a beautiful car that your folks, your parents or whoever said, this is the only car you're going to have for the rest of your life, you would take meticulous care of it. And I just want to beg and plead with people. Your body is a magnificent machine. You only get one of them. Do whatever you can to take care of it. As much as you can. It is so worth it. The money spent, the time spent, it is way less than what happens when you don't take care of it and then end up in the medical system and the pharmaceutical system. Nothing against that. They're doing a lot of great work and they're wonderful people, but it is so much better to prevent it than it is to manage it after it happens. So I just want to encourage people, please, please, please take good care of yourself. Like you said, Durley, don't sweat the small stuff. Major on the majors. Take time to enjoy the key people in your life. And if you don't enjoy the people in your life, find some that you do. My gosh, find a way to enjoy people and adventure and beauty. Go look at the flowers, go look at the birds, go look at the mountains, the beach, because it does so much good for you. It's better than medicine. It really is.
So Andy,
That's my final.
That's an excellent way for to wrap this up. And I've been so fascinated with this conversation. We can continue on and on for another hour if we could, but I'm gonna let you go. And I really, really appreciate the time that you spent with me this evening.
Oh, it was a pleasure to spend time with you, Durley, for sure. And I just hope there's something people can extract out of all my many words that will serve them well in their pursuits and in their health, for sure. Thank you for having me. It was a real privilege.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening.
And you too.